I never thought I'd end up going to the Philippines of all places. I used to joke with the lads at the pub that the furthest I'd ever get was Benidorm if I was lucky, but after the divorce and selling the house I had with my ex in Birmingham, I did have a bit of spare change. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to get me out of the UK for a while and reset. One night I saw some programme on the telly about Boracay and the fantastic beaches that were there, and I thought to myself, why not? Why do I need to keep doing the same things and waiting for nothing to change? So I did. I booked myself a ticket, just like that. And when I got there, it was like stepping into another world altogether. The heat, the craziness, and the women looking at me in a way like nobody ever looked at me back at home. I did tell myself I deserved a second chance. Maybe after slogging away for years in factories since I was a teenager, I'd finally get a slice of something better. But looking back, I should have known that nothing comes easy. Every smile that you see is always something behind it, and I'd never think about it up until then. I didn't see it though at the time. I was just glad that I was somewhere so different. When I got there, I can remember just how overwhelmed I was to start with. I gave my mate a call back home and told him I felt like I arrived in a different world altogether, and told him he should get himself here as well. I was taken aback, really. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, but at the same time, I did expect it to be as good as it was. I mean, that's why I went in the first place. It was my plan to be there for a month total, starting out first in Manila, and then I wanted to go to Boracay because that's what I'd watched on the telly about the reason I booked. It was nothing like Benidorm or Spain when I was there, and it took me a day or two just to get used to it. I was really shocked about what I saw around me, and part of me thought perhaps I should just go home. I didn't feel comfortable straight away when I was there, but that quickly eased up as soon as I made my way to a place I read about online, which most people seem to talk about. If you know, it is called P. Burgos Street. I'd done myself some research before I left. It wasn't just watching a programme on the telly and that was it, and I wanted to check out the nightlife and see what it was all about. I mean, I'd just been divorced. I thought I deserved this new chance. And at 56, my chances at home were pretty bad, and everyone used to say that in the Philippines things were different, more traditional and better in every way. I suppose that's what I got from that evening as well. I bet there were people saying the exact opposite of what I researched, but I chose not to look at that. So I went in with the mind that the Philippines could be my chance for a second go altogether. I was thinking about the possibility of even moving there before I even left to go there, before I'd even spent the month there. Perhaps this could be a new start altogether after selling the house. I had together with my ex a bit of savings over the years that had to be split. It's meant that after everything I had about 250 grand cash in the bank. And when people say that was enough money to live out the rest of my days without any hassle or stress in the Philippines, and it started to sound appealing. But before I got to moving there, it was just a question of taking everything in about the Philippines. What was it actually going to be like? Was it going to be anything that I could see myself enjoying? But after those first few weeks and that trip to the famous street and enjoying all the bars there, that was when I realised that it was actually far better than I had first thought. I knew enough to know that you don't need to go and meet a girl in a bar, but you do start to think that perhaps you need to. Why not? At least, that's what I thought. Didn't get to that position yet, though. You do start thinking, though, that perhaps these girls could be my new partner. I didn't move further with those feelings much more than that, but I enjoyed my time in Manila for the week I was there. I didn't meet anyone on that first week in Manila, although I could have if I wanted to. And I thought that was how the world should be in a way. Like if you want to meet someone and settle down, surely it should be easy. It seemed to be that the Philippines was something that drew me in even further. I left as planned from Manila and made my way to Boracay. It was even better in person than it was on the telly, and it was like a paradise. Why would anyone go to Spain when you had a place like this in the world? I'd say everywhere was cheaper than Spain I'd seen so far in the Philippines, so why go to Spain? All you're getting there was more expense. But when I was in Boracay, it was unbelievable to think just how much cheaper it was. Thinking about moving there at that point, it started to feel like it was a bad decision not to. If I didn't move there, I'd been missing out on everything, and I'm loving everything about it. I stayed there a week and just had to go back to Manila. Manila was the place that scared me to start with and made me nearly want to go home. But after I got into it, I started to think that I could see myself there. The thing I liked most about Manila, if I'm thinking about what it felt like things were closer to me than they were at home. By closer, I mean while things were still expensive in terms of buying somewhere to live, I mean I even had enough cash in the bank that I could buy myself a little place in the capital city of a country and still have a lot of cash left over. If I was at home, everything I had would go into one small house somewhere I didn't really want to live, and there would be nothing left over. So that made me pretty excited to think about the Philippines in that way. It wasn't like I was thinking about buying somewhere straight away. I just had 2 weeks left in the country, and it was really about getting to know the place even more. I went to loads of places during those 2 weeks, Ermita, Quezon City, BGC, but I kept coming back to Makati as my favourite part of the city. I guess it was because that was where the main nightlife was going, and I loved it. As soon as you step foot in a bar, you kind of forget about all your own problems that are going on in your life, and you start thinking about possibilities and looking forward to things coming up in the future. Up until then, I used to just regret everything that happened in my past, and then that was elevated by the fact that my wife decided to leave me. Took half the stuff I'd slaved away for over the years, and I never really had time to just think what it was for. I wanted something for me. It did seem like the Philippines could be a place that was meant for me and me alone. By that, I mean as a single person, not that nobody else could move there, but I was just drawn to Makati as being the place I loved most in the world, and that was after being there for only 3 weeks total. I was there for a whole month total, including the week in Boracay, but I mean in Manila. Best month of my life that was, hands down, the best month of my life. And if I could have my life for the rest of my life, that's all I really wanted. That's really it. Flying back to Blighty and landing in London, it kind of felt like how I would guess people used to feel when they were forcibly removed from England a few centuries ago and taken to places like Australia. Although I was taken to England, I didn't want to be there. By the way, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Australia. From everything I've looked at, it looks far better than England does. But what I'm trying to say is that arriving back in England, it felt like some kind of sick joke that had been concocted by a villain in an unreleased James Bond movie. I needed to get back to the Philippines as quickly as I could, and I was worried because you start thinking about other things you've got going on in your life at home. But then, if you think about it a bit more, properly, you realise, hang on, my wife left me, I don't have a house that belongs to me anymore, my kids are grown up and have already left home, and I've got 250 grand cash. Why do I need to even bother staying here? I can leave, and I can leave quickly if I want to. So, when you start thinking about that, there's nothing really keeping you there. That's it. I think before I came to that conclusion, I was too worked up in my own mind as to what could go wrong. Not necessarily what could go wrong, more like I had pictures in my mind of reasons why I needed to stay in England. Or that's why you're from, so you need to stay there because that's where you're from, that's what you're meant to do. You need to get a job, all these things I'm thinking about, which is pushing the thought that I could move to the Philippines further away. Yet when you release yourself from those thoughts, you come to the conclusion pretty quickly that staying in England would actually be a big negative. Moving to the Philippines would be a positive, and that's where I should be able to remain if things went okay. I remember just sitting at home one day, thinking, do I get another job and live here like you're meant to do? Or do I move to the Philippines and live there for the rest of my life, and maybe have a lot better life than I had at home? When you start comparing the two, it doesn't take you long to come to the determination that the Philippines is where I'm meant to be. So one day, I just called my best mates and told them that at the weekend, my treat down at the pub, because I've got some big news. 3 of my closest mates, they were my mates all my life. They were all still married and had connections to England, so they weren't able to do anything about that, even if they wanted to. But when the weekend came and we're in the pub, I tell them about it and they're all looking at me like I'm crazy. Yet the look on their face was like, damn, I wish I could do that. The fact they couldn't do that, they of course had to tell me it was a bad idea. But I chose to think about them telling me it was a bad idea to be a good idea because they couldn't do it. They all wished me luck though, really great lads, and my best mate said if anything goes wrong, you've always got a place on my couch. Then he said for a few weeks, laughing at the same time. If I thought I would actually have to take him up on that offer, I guess I probably wouldn't have gone. But at least I tried, eh? Being back in England for more than a month when I booked to go back to the Philippines. I was going with no plans, going to be spending time in Makati, then I was just going to take things from there. I wasn't planning on rushing into anything or doing anything other than just enjoying myself. With the money I had, I was getting a little bit of interest in the bank, it wasn't a lot, but if I spent some money, that was going to see me a long time. That's what I'm thinking to myself. And when I got to the Philippines, it felt even better than the first time. I did have a little bit of apprehension that what would I do when I was there? Would I feel like I'd made the bad decision and I shouldn't have bothered going? But I didn't. I didn't feel like that. I actually felt like I wish I could have done this earlier, and the thought of England completely vanished from my mind. I never once thought about England when I was in the Philippines. The Philippines just had that way about it that makes you think that nothing else matters. And for me at least, for a few years, nothing else did matter apart from the Philippines. Until the Philippines became everything that went wrong in my life. And that was when I met a girl in one of those bars on P. Burgos Street. I'd already been living in the Philippines, I'd say, for 2 weeks, hadn't really been out much. I just looked around to find myself a place to live. I rented a cheap place in Makati. I kept coming back to Makati as being the best place in the Philippines. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with that place now because of everything that happened. But when I got sorted with a place to live and just got into the fact that I was living there, that's when I decided it was time to go and start thinking about what I really wanted to do, which was to go out more. It was my first night after being back in the Philippines when I was out, about 2 weeks into being there, and that was when I met her. 22 years old, incredibly beautiful, and she just seemed to be looking for someone exactly like me. She said she'd been working there for 2 years, and after she told me that, it definitely did seem that we were made for each other. It felt like she'd been working there for 2 years, purely waiting for someone like me, and part of me was drawn to that fact that she seemed to be so into me. I never really had anyone into me before. It was always me into them. But she seemed to be so into me, I just bought into it straight away. I know I've heard lots of stories before when the age gap has been very big. 56 I was and she was 22. And looking back, I understand that that's quite a significant gap in terms of a difference. But you have to understand at the time, my mentality was that this was normal in the Philippines. I actually thought that she loved me more than I loved her. And when we started living together not long after we met, it was great. I thought that I was someone that she considered to be the person who could marry her and we could start a life together. I know what you're going to say, but at the time that's how I felt, so I have to tell you how it was. I'd been there for 2 months after we met and she was living with me. 2 months after that is when I asked her to marry me. And then that's when I found a little bit more about her than I knew before. Only when I asked her to marry me did she actually give me more information about herself. She had 4 kids, and that would have been a deal breaker if I didn't think she was the best girl I'd ever met. She kept saying that when she was younger, she was just silly and done some things she regrets. But now she's in a position, and she's in it, she wants someone to help bring up her kids. I already brought up my 2 kids, and the thought of bringing up someone else's was not really what I had in mind. But I did reason with myself that she was a lot younger than me, and if I was able to help her, then she's going to love me and respect me even more. So I actually thought that her having kids was to my advantage, because she could see how great I was at helping her and the kids. I even wanted to help her family at the time, because I just thought that's what you did. I didn't know about scams or anything like that. I just thought it was her dream to meet someone exactly like me, and it was her dream to do something different and make me happy. In return, I'd make her happy and take care of the kids. What could go wrong? I think they were signs straight away that it wasn't what I thought it was, almost immediately after she moved in. Even before I asked her to marry me, there were signs that something was up. I just didn't pick up on them at all. For example, when she moved in and had been with me for 2 weeks, she said it was normal for a boyfriend of someone in the Philippines to help out with the family as a sign of respect and as a sign that I was serious. Now, I've never heard that before in any other story, and I've tried to research, and I've not heard it there as well. But at the time, I just believed her, and didn't even bother thinking to look into it. Why would I? I was in love with her. Also, I thought perhaps it was infatuation, but it was love, really. And I thought she was in love with me. I actually thought that by me staying with her was her dream coming true. I thought I was her dream, and it was coming true right in front of me. But when she brought up and told me it was normal, I gladly gave her family £5,000. That was a big chunk of my money, and I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was one of the many steps I would have to go down in order to prove that I was a good provider for her. I've since learned that that is nothing more than a scam concocted to get money out of me before I even married. You can be under someone's spell for a long time, and then, when you're not under their spell, you can look and think, why did I do that? Yet when you're still under the spell, you can't see reason, and I couldn't see reason until it was too late. She was from Leyte, so we went down there to see the family, and I was expecting them to thank me for the money I'd sent them about a month before, but there was no mention of it. They were polite and friendly and courteous, but it wasn't the kind of welcome I was expecting. I thought I was going to be welcomed as the future husband of their daughter. I thought I was going to be treated like a king, but I wasn't. But I mean, I didn't really mind. It was just of a shock when I realised that it wasn't what I was thinking. They were happy for us to marry, and that was good. And it was just a bit of an introduction to show them who I was and how serious I was and how much I loved her. Before we were due back to Manila, that's when she said that it's common practice, after meeting with the family for the first time, to give them some money as well. I mean, that took me back because it wasn't long ago when I gave them £5,000. But now she said, I'm thinking, well, I've already invested, we love each other, so if that's what they do here, I'm going to go ahead. So I gave them another £5,000. I'm not even thinking about how much money I've got and it's going down or anything like that. I'm just living in the moment like I've never done before. It really is great living in the moment until you get to the point where you can't live in the moment due to lack of funds. But I never expected that to be the case because all these little things happening were just one-offs. So, after knowing her for 4 months, I'd already given her about £10,000 to her family, and I thought that was perfectly normal because she told me it was. Back in Manila, everything I needed was sorted so we could get married, and that took a bit of time, but it was a process I enjoyed. I needed to understand it, and I enjoyed doing it. I also need you to understand that when we're talking, she's always smiling and happy. She's always laughing at my jokes, making more jokes with me. She's always affectionate. There's no indication that she's anything other than an amazing girl who loves me. So when she's asking for things, it's not like she's asking for them and they're not warranted. So I just kept going along with it, and when the day came that we were going to get married, that's when she came up with another excuse why her family needed money. She said, on marriage day, it's normal to give money to the family, because I'll be yours now. When she said that it was £10,000, I was taken aback, but I just had been under her spell and gave her the money. I have to mention that I hadn't met her kids yet. I'd only met her parents down when we were there, because we were going to wait to see until we got married first to meet her kids. But the fact that we were married now, I thought the requests were going to stop and I was going to be in charge of things because that's how I always thought it was meant to be. And I need to stress that I was very happy to give the money. I was taken aback by it, a bit shocked by it, but I was happy. I gave it willingly because she just said that that was part of the tradition in the Philippines. I guess what I should have said is, how much did your old boyfriend give your family when you were together and had 4 kids? I should have said that, but she'd have said absolutely nothing. But you don't think about those things at the time because you're told they're normal. It was great to be married again though. This time to a girl that I thought loved me more than I loved her. And I thought that as I handed over £20,000 in a few months, I didn't even cross my mind to think about that though. I still had £220,000 left or something. Probably spent £10,000 just on going around and having a good time with her. I'm not even commuting the fact that I'm £30,000 poorer in less than 6 months in a country that's meant to be a lot cheaper than where I was from. I wouldn't spend anywhere near that back home, so I should have thought about it, but I didn't. When we were married, it was great though. We both seemed happy. There was no indication that she's anything other than who I thought she was, and what that she said was true. And I was just happy in the position I was in. We were still in the same place in Makati. That was only like 400 quid a month, and it was good enough for me. But she said now we're married, we need to have our own place so that my kids can move in. We had talked about her kids living with us in the future, but I thought that was going to be after a few years of her spending time with me. But now it seemed like she expected that sooner. Again, it's not like she's asking for this in a way that means she's demanding it. She's always sweet and kind about it. So I said, well, where do you want to live? And she said, Leyte. I must admit to really liking it when I was there. She was from a place a little bit inland, so it wasn't next to the beach, which was a bit of a letdown. But she said because it wasn't next to a beach, it was cheaper to buy land around there, and we could probably get a decent plot for around 15 grand. I'm talking in pounds because I'm a UK guy, and I don't really know much about dollars, and pesos always confused me when I was there. So that was decided. I always got her to do the conversions into pounds though, because it made it easy for me. 15 grand didn't sound like a lot of money for some land that we could have a house on, that we could live forever in, so we went to Leyte and started looking. There were more requests to give money to her family every now and then. I think she'd used most of them, but some came up and I always helped. So when we got there, we were staying at the family's house. That was a very strange experience for me because there was nowhere really for me to stay. I just had to sleep on the floor and everyone else was sleeping on the floor around the room. It felt like those jails you see pictures of in Asian countries, all those people huddled around on the floor. And that's what it was like, although I could leave when I wanted to. We stayed like that for a month. It was very uncomfortable sleeping on a concrete floor, and it wasn't ideal because we're in a room with basically her whole family and her kids. So it wasn't the place I would really like to spend nights. But what it did allow was time to look at the place where we were going to start our married life from. Everything is great, so you put up with these little sacrifices for her. It didn't take long to find what she said was land that was everything we needed. It was actually 25 grand, which was 10 grand more than I expected it to be. But I'm thinking about the future. If I bought this land and built a house, once we've got that, it's not going to be much money to spend at all. When we go out to eat, we're always going to local Filipino places. We're not going anywhere that's really fancy or flash. And in terms of modest living expenses, they were just that, incredibly modest. So we bought the land, and once we got it, we went back to Manila when the house was being built. I agreed to spend 75 grand for the house because we needed a big enough place where her kids could stay as well. And I just gave her money bit by bit so she could send it to her family who were dealing with the builders for us. They always sent pictures and it was happening, so I wasn't overly concerned that anything was wrong. I'm not even thinking about money at this point, and after everything now, I've probably got less than 100 grand left. But that's when you start to think, well, there's nothing left to spend anymore. Maybe 600 or 700 quid a month, that's all you need in order to have a good life in the new house. So it sounded okay. When it was ready, before we went, we actually decided to go to Boracay for a week to have a honeymoon a bit late. I never got to go on a honeymoon with my ex-wife, and I wanted to do that with my new wife. She'd never been before, and we had a great time, and I spent a little bit too much money there, but again, I'm not thinking about it. You might be thinking, how am I not thinking about the fact that I'm spending all this money? I'm just so in the moment, so caught up in how different and great life can be, that I think I just had a mental block as to what was going on. At the end of the week, the honeymoon was great. That's when she said, "Where's my honeymoon present?" I didn't even know what a honeymoon present was, but she told me she gave me my honeymoon present because we were already married. And then she said, "Well, where's my honeymoon present?" I asked her what she wanted and she said, "Oh, just 100,000 pesos. I just had to say, there you go, and that was it. We didn't talk about it anymore. From there, we headed to Leyte to see our new house for the first time. It was incredible. It was really big, 2-story, 4-bedroom, decent living room and kitchen. Although, one thing that became apparent straight away was that we didn't have any furniture. There was no actual kitchen in there. There was nothing there. And when she told me 75 grand, I thought that was for the whole thing, including the furniture and everything inside. She just said, no, we need to go and buy that now. So after that, we spent about 15 grand for everything inside the place. A week after living in there, and I look at my bank and there's about 60 grand, that's the first time I started to think, oh, what's actually going on? I was so in the moment for all that time that I was failing to understand that I was spending so much money. While I knew I was spending it, I'm not that stupid. I was just doing it thinking that by the time everything's done, I'm still going to have half my money left. Even when I went below half my money, I'm still thinking that I'm going to have half my money left. That might sound really stupid, but I mean, that's what happened. I was just so happy and in the moment to have this girl, the sort of girl that I'd only ever dreamt about, with me and married to me, thinking that I was out of her league. But that's what I thought, so if I did strange things, it's because the feelings like that were so overwhelming. I think that is the most important thing that I want to say, because I was with her, we were married, she was so beautiful and so out of my league, really. The fact that she wasn't out of my league, the fact that we were together and married, if that's possible, then anything is possible. So that's if I try to think about it and explain myself as to why I did what I did. I just thought that everything was going to be okay. But when I had 60 grand in the bank and we're living in the house, we just start living a normal life. As normal a life as you can have in a position like that. There's always needs for money. Her kids are living with us as well, and I'm expected to look after them. Paying bits of money when they're going to school, I'm just spending so much more money than I should be. When I worked out how much I could have spent, about 500 quid a month, I could have a great time living there with that. But then, when you actually calculate how much money you're spending, it's close to 3 grand a month. Then you start to think, hang on, 2 years and all the money is going to go. When I brought this up with my wife and said we need to make some more money if we continue spending like this, she says, that's great, I've got some ideas, I think we can do something. So yes, I gave her 40 grand to invest in a business that she said was a surefire thing. It wasn't, of course, was it? And 6 months later, all that money had gone, and then all of a sudden, that's when you start to realise that you can only live in the moment for so long. I lived in the moment until I had like 20 grand in the bank. Less than that probably, 15 grand even. And then the fact that my wife tried to do this business and it failed so much. Then she came back to me saying, well, I can try something else. Can I have more money? That was the first time I had to tell her, sorry, I don't have any money left, apart from a little bit to live on for a few years. When I tried to find work online, I don't know. But that's when I started thinking about it desperately. I was thinking that I needed to find some work online because I needed to make more money. Yet when I said to her, I never expected her to react in the way she did. Living there became extremely uncomfortable overnight. I know full well that if I had unlimited money, I could continue doing what I was doing. I would still be there now even if I did. The problem was I didn't have unlimited money, and the fact that I couldn't give her money anytime she asked for it anymore, then she wasn't the wife that I married anymore. It was simply like turning a switch on and off. That might sound brutal, but it's the brutal truth, unfortunately. It was simply like turning a switch on and off. The money comes in, the switch is on. No money, the switch is off. No middle ground or anything of the sort. And when I told her that there was no more money coming in, I'm sorry about that, it was as if she told me, well, you need to leave then. She didn't actually say that. She just said, well, I hope you can make more money soon because we need money. And I said, I'll try. That was the first time I ever tried to work online. I'd worked in factories all my life. I know nothing about working online, but everyone talked about it. Of course, I failed miserably at that attempt, and when I had 5 grand in the bank and I told her I can't give you any more money for anything anymore, that's when I came back one night after going for a walk and she wasn't there. All the kids were there, and I called her and asked her where she was. She just said, I'm with my boyfriend. I'll be back when I'm ready. That's how quickly your life can come crashing down in the Philippines when your money runs out. I was just shocked. I thought she loved me more than I loved her. I would have bet my life on it. I'd have bet everything on it. And I did. I bet my life savings on it because that's what I actually thought was true. But it doesn't take you long to understand how wrong you were. And then I found out how wrong I was. 250,000 quid lost in a few years to a girl who basically scammed me out of everything I had. It is a scam. You could call it that. Or you could call it me being really stupid for just giving over money that I shouldn't have given over. I mean, I shouldn't have done that. I just thought that she was in love with me, and because of that, we were going to live happily ever after. You know, like the fairy tale endings you hear about all the time. That's what I thought was going on, but it wasn't. When I didn't leave after, she told me she had a different boyfriend. She just became more blatant about it until the point where she moved him in with us. Quite literally, she moved him into the house with us, and she slept with him in the spare bedroom. 2 days later, I knew that was the end of it, and I had to leave. And while we are still married today, and while I did call my mate and take him up on his offer of a place on his couch, nothing could have made me feel like what actually happened could have happened. I thought we were in love. I was in love, yet she was just in business.